Welcome to Human Potential at Work, the show where we explore social impact, inclusion, and empowerment of everyone, including persons with disabilities. Get ready to be inspired, hear success stories, and learn tips and principles for bringing out the best in everyone.
Hello, everyone. This is Debra, and you're watching or listening to Human Potential at Work. We are proud to be strategists and market influencers for the community of people with disabilities and to really tap into what does it mean to be truly human. So this is my first show of 2019, and I've been really looking forward to interviewing this next guest. One of my past guests, and somebody that I really look up to, Dick Traum, Traum, who started Achilles International, recommended Minda to be on the program. And if you haven't watched the episode with Dick and you really want to spend a good hour, I would recommend doing that because he's got a wonderful voice, and he shows what despite life sending us all kind of obstacles along the way, what we can actually achieve in our life. So Minda, welcome to the program.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Yes, we are really excited to have you here, and you have a really amazing career, and you're still a young woman, so you still have so much of the world to save. It's going to be very, very exciting to watch you progress. But Minda, tell the audience a little bit more about who you are.
Well, I guess the short of the story would be...
I know it's a hard question, isn't it?
I know, right? Well, I'm a person with a disability. I have polio. I work full-time at a large global insurer in New York City. I'm a mother to an active 4-year-old daughter. I'm an athlete. I've completed 4 Ironman triathlons, and I'm a speaker, and I'm a global health advocate.
Wow. And you said that you had polio. I know a lot of people think the polio has been cured and that people don't have polio anymore. And my last episode, I had the wonderful, amazing Judy Human, who also had polio as a child. And I think a lot of us think that polio has been eradicated, but of course, that is not completely true. So I don't know if you want to address that a little bit.
Well, the global fight to end polio has been a 25 plus long journey. There's a huge global partnership that's focused on that. This past year, there were 29 cases of polio.
Wow. Yeah, and you know, I was actually watching a show on Netflix the other day, and it's going to slowly come to my mind what the title of it is, but it was about a man that contracted polio as a child, and I'm sorry, as an adult, and he actually wound up being the first person to create a wheelchair. It's a beautiful story, and
wow.
I will definitely, yeah, it's a beautiful story, and it's a story that I just really enjoyed watching, because even though I belong to this community, I love this community, I advocate for this community, there's still so much that I don't know. And there's still so much that's evolving. And when this man got polio, and I didn't know this, for example, that you can breathe in polio and get it if you haven't been vaccinated. I just didn't know that because I just celebrated a very important birthday. I just turned 60. And
wow, yeah.
I know.
Congratulations.
I know. It's like, well, that's not old, right? No, my daughter assures me it is old. She assures me. But when I was a child, I remember getting the polio vaccination because it was on my arm, and it hurt, and it made a scar. It was a scar. So we all had scars, and we were able to show them, especially of children my age, So a lot of us, we never really learned that much about polio because we eradicated it. So I am fascinated with that part of it, and also that you're continuing to advocate for that. But then also what, of course, intrigues me the most about you is really for Ironman. I wanted to do one, but there's so many pieces to an Ironman triathlon. And so will you just talk a little bit about that? Because there, if I'm correct, there's 3 different parts. There's the swimming, the biking, and the running. And I, at the time, thought I could do probably the biking and the running, but I didn't think I could run, I could walk, I could swim a mile, if that's still what it is. But tell us a little bit about that. And also, first of all, tell us a little bit about that. And then I'll ask
About
you.
Ironman?
Yeah.
Well, people don't just walk into Ironman. And my journey was, it took me about 5 years from starting triathlon to step up to that long distance. An Ironman triathlon just means that it talks about the distance. So it's 2.4 mile swim, and then it's followed by a 112-mile bike ride, and then you finish it off with a 26.2 mile or marathon run for a total distance of 140.6 miles in a single day effort.
Right. I was going to say in one day. That's why I didn't do it, because I didn't think I could do it. So why, and we call it an Ironman. Of course, we're going to call it an Iron Woman for the show. But so why, there are a lot of elite athletes that complete an Ironman, and you've done 4. And so why is it different? Why are we talking about this, Minda, that you completed for Ironman, besides the wow factor anyway, that anybody could do it? But, what about your story makes it a little bit more interesting, you completing 4 of those?
Well, as I mentioned before, I have polio, and for me, polio, my legs are completely paralyzed. So from the waist down. So for me, I'm a wheelchair athlete, and growing up, I didn't participate in sports. I actually didn't have access to them. And so it wasn't until I became a young adult that I was introduced to sports. So maybe I could talk a little bit about that, and then maybe
please
into what the Ironman is about. So at age 28, while I was in business school, one of my friends had introduced me to Achilles International, which is the organization that Dick Traum runs. And I had never been athletic before. And he gave me an opportunity to ride a hand cycle. And then within months, I was training for my first marathon. And I was so excited about that. And then within a year, I was watching one of my friends, who's also a wheelchair athlete, complete the New York City triathlon. And it's an Olympic distance triathlon. It's about, it's a quarter of the distance of an Ironman. And when I saw him cross that finish line, I thought, man, I would really like to do one. But it's one thing to say that you want to do something, but then to really actually do it. Because I was so excited, I immediately signed up for the race the following year. But I also signed up for swimming lessons because I didn't know how to swim. Wow. And I also had to learn how to ride a racing wheelchair. And so within 5 months, I started in January, and the race was that June, I was able to complete my first triathlon. And I remember crossing that finish line thinking, wow, it took a long time, don't get me wrong, but I was hooked. And I joined a triathlon team, and then within 5 years, I had stepped up the distance from half Ironman to a full Ironman. And as a wheelchair athlete, there are very few people who are competing in the long distance triathlon races. And in the female category, I can count them on my hands. And so one thing that I got inspired by was the idea of doing the Ironman World Championships. And I used to watch the show like as a kid with my dad. Basically, it's this like grueling race in Kona, Hawaii. And I remember watching on the television how people were just killing themselves for this race. And I thought,
I've seen that.
Why would people do this? And then fast forward so many years, one of my friends who's also a wheelchair athlete, Jason Fowler, kind of put a bug in my ear and was like, hey, Minda, why don't you try doing it? And so in 2012, I attempted my first Ironman in Louisville. I finished that, and I qualified for the Ironman World Championships. And here I was standing, or I guess sitting, looking at the water, thinking, what am I doing? But I came in there knowing the history that no female wheelchair athlete had ever completed the race. And the reason why is because there are strict time cutoffs in between each of the disciplines. So the time cutoff that was difficult for me was the swim, bike, cutoff. So you have to swim 2.4 miles and hand cycle, which I use, 112 miles within 10 and a half hours. And so I failed to make that bike cutoff time that first year that I tried to do it. And then the following year, I really had to figure out, create a new strategy or plan and execute on that so I could get it done the following year. And I'm proud to say that I was able to finish, and I did become the first female wheelchair athlete to complete the Ironman World Championship.
Which is amazing. It's amazing for anybody to complete it, quite frankly. I remember running a half marathon when I was younger, and I ran Walk It, and they were actually picking up the cones at the end of the race. And I'm like, wait. So I was never really fast, but I enjoyed the endurance. And so it's a really big deal for anybody, I think, to complete it. And then how exciting that you were the first wheelchair user to complete it. So that's very cool. Where did you grow up? Did you grow up in the United States? You live in the United States now.
Yeah, well, I was originally born in India.
Okay.
That's where I contracted polio. Actually, my mother, she was quite poor and she didn't have access to the vaccine.
Okay.
And when she found out I had contracted polio, she realized that she couldn't take care of me and she left me in an orphanage. But fortunately, I was adopted by an American family and I moved to Spokane, Washington at the age of 3. So my formative years, or where I grew up, was Spokane, Washington. And then I moved to New York City after I graduated from college.
Wow, that is such an interesting story, Minda. That's very interesting. And now you're working full time at a really big corporation, and you're a mother and a wife and an athlete, and you speak all over the world about your work as well. So I have actually gone and watched some of Minda's speeches, and I highly recommend her. If you're a corporation, you're looking for or any organization looking for a really good, inspiring story and speaker, Minda is definitely a really, really good person to bring in, because even the story of your mother loving you enough to know that she couldn't take care of you. And so she put you in an orphanage, which had to be very hard in those formative years. And you have a very interesting life story. And I'm sure it's not always easy, your life story, but it's easy for us to get inspired by you, Minda. So when you do speeches, tell us a little bit about what you talk about other than your very, very interesting life.
It's actually kind of funny that you say that, because I didn't think I was that person. And I grew up a bit of a shy person. And it was actually, I kind of fell into it. When I finished that race in Kona in 2013, there's an awards dinner the very next day. And when I went to the awards dinner, I met one of my triathlon heroes. Her name is Chrissy Wellington. She's a 4-time Ironman World Champion. And she pulled me aside and she had told me, Minda, you have a platform. Go now and use it. And at first, I really didn't understand what she meant. And so over the course of the very next year, I started sharing my personal story about having polio and conquering the Ironman. And she inspired me to really think about just beyond being an athlete and to really use my platform to help change the world. And so now I use my voice to help raise awareness about ending polio and other vaccine preventable diseases worldwide. And also by sharing my own story of completing the Ironman, I hope that I can inspire people to help them think about taking on their own personal Ironman.
Right. I think often women are discouraged from being athletes, and we're discouraged from really going out and showing what we're capable of doing. And that's one thing I love about the story. And I also love that you had these mentors that pushed you to find your purpose and be your best, men and women. And I think that's something that we're seeing happen in the world right now. Who's to say that a young girl originally from India, now in the United States, and polio and paralyzed from the waist down, couldn't go out and complete 4 Ironman triathlons and then go around the world and make a difference, to make sure that we understand that even if something does happen to you in your life that is very serious and, tragic, like polio, that you actually could go on and live a really incredible life. I think maybe that story needs to be heard more and more to give people hope all over the world.
Sometimes it's just about starting,
Yes. That first step, that first push of the wheelchair. So it is a big deal. And I was thinking, Minda, when you were talking at the beginning about how you started training, I love to dance, and I've been dancing for exercise for years. And I recently, I hurt my leg, and I have a nagging shin split on one of my, it's so annoying, but I have to listen to my body. And so I'm doing all the things, but you have all of those things that we don't talk about in training to do an Ironman. So how do you, and the reality is your body would sometimes, it had to have pushed back sometimes. Yeah. So how do you keep going? How do you keep going on the days when it's like, whatever the obstacle is, and I think once again, this is such a good conversation to have in January 2019. Sure. What if this is in your way, or you're you come from the wrong place, or your skin's the wrong color, or you love what keeps you moving forward despite the challenges in your life?
That's a big question. Sorry. I think that, for me, look, I'm obviously not doing any of this by myself, right? So I've built a great team around me to help me in achieving my goals, whether, it's in the work setting or, in the athletic setting. Triathlon is an individual sport, but especially as a wheelchair athlete, you really have to rely on the help of others, from like simple things like, okay, so my hand cycle is very low to the ground, and it's very dangerous for me to ride outside on the highway by myself. So I had a number of friends and my husband who did a lot of miles with me on the New Jersey highway training, for my races. And then it's also, I think, just another lesson that I've learned, or something that kind of keeps me going, is that idea of believing in myself. Like, you have to be your own cheerleader first. And it's so true. And I remember, distinctly, when I was trying to figure out, okay, what am I going to do if I want to achieve this goal that no one has ever achieved before? Like, it was a lot about like just changing my mindset. Like, okay, so who cares that people don't think a woman can do it? Like, right. I have to think that I can do it, because that's going to drive me forward, especially in those moments, in my training where I'm like, what am I doing? Or even in a race situation where, the little negative doubt is like going to come, and then you have to like push it out and say, no, I came here to get this done. And just having that, I guess, just remaining focused or determined throughout any type of obstacle. I also talk about this, like, a lot of what I've learned just by training and racing Ironman, I've been able to apply to my own job. Like, when we talk about being determined, like, it took me a lot of years of experience, 9 months of hard training to prepare for the Ironman. And sometimes, we can think like, when we're executing on a big goal at work, a lot of things come up, like changing priorities, or like you lose your funding, or, whatever it is. It's just, it is about being flexible and adaptable. And sometimes it's just operating moment by moment. Like, in a race, it's like focusing on the next, like, stroke in the water, like pushing my hand cycle to the next tree, and then like cranking on my wheelchair to the next bush, just always moving forward to that finish line. And you can say the same thing in work, just moving from milestone to milestone, but always with that end goal in focus.
I was going to ask you about how this applied to your work. And so that was beautifully said. And often when I talk to corporations about including the community of people with disabilities in their workforce and retaining us and training and all of those things, I say that I believe that if you were lucky enough to hire people with disabilities, you're going to get, not every single person, because people with disabilities are, people. And so, it's like anything else, not everybody is as driven as, everybody's different, but you were able to apply what you had to do in your life to the workforce. And there's major benefits to employers to hire people like you that are determined to do what you have to do to continue to move your life forward. So that was very well said. I love the way you explained that. And once again, why I think Minda's a really good speaker for corporate events too, because, and I don't know if you know this, Minda, but how long does a typical athlete, you might not know this, but how long does a typical athlete train to do the Ironman? Because I believe it's a lot longer than 9 months generally for most people. Because,
right.
I don't know if you know the numbers, but it is much longer than 9 months. So what you did was really pretty astounding. You didn't even know how to swim. So
no, I didn't. I had to learn. It was really funny. It's hard.
It is. And so, and that's why, once again, I always thought, oh, I can't do it. Because I just figure, even though I'm a swimmer, I didn't think I could pull it off. And, I think we can pull off whatever we want, whatever we put our mind, we focus on. Right. And you're the proof of that. But for most people to do an Ironman, it takes years and years and years of training. I know that that's true.
It took me a good 5 years, definitely. And also I think it's a lot about like time management and being efficient, like, working full time, living in New York City. I didn't have all the hours to train, right? So it was about getting up early, like hearing that alarm and getting up and doing the work, before I had to work. And but it's worth it in the end. But it is it truly is a lot of work. It's a long journey. But it's really nice to have something outside of work that I can focus on for myself.
Right. And so what do you think this tells your daughter? So your daughter, as you said, 4 years old?
Yep. She's almost 4. Yep.
Which is a beautiful age. I love that age.
Yeah. She's almost 4. You know what? Like I want physical fitness to be a part of who we are as a family. And I think that's what she's seeing. And like when she wakes up and she sees me on my bike in the morning, or she knows that, or if I'm not there in the morning, like her dad tells her that I went to the pool. And then also she's able to see me at races. Like and we went to Colombia, we did a half Ironman in December. And it was really fun because she gets to be in that race environment. And then she's excited to ride her own bike, and she's excited to go to her own swimming lessons, and she loves to run. So I think it's teaching that, hard work can get you places.
Right, which is a beautiful lesson. It's a beautiful lesson. And one thing that I loved about, doing, some of the team sports, like doing a half marathon and stuff, was there's so much camaraderie around the participants. And even and it's probably my personality a little bit, but as I would run and the crowds would be on the road and they'd be cheering for you, it just gave me so much energy at times, often when I really needed that energy. It would be like, I can't do one more step. I can't, and once again, that's so much of a smaller thing than what you've accomplished. But I got a lot of energy from the other participants and from the people that were supporting the participants. And I thought it was really, really a powerful experience. And it sounds like you're experiencing that kind of power as well from everyone.
Yeah. I mean, well, look, I didn't grow up with organized sports growing up. So I get really excited to be in an environment that's inclusive. And, I'm working just as hard as the person who doesn't have a disability who is running alongside me. And we are working towards the same finish line. So I really like the aspect of inclusivity that sports can bring. And then also the idea of being able to improve upon your last performance. So, there's always something you can do to help yourself and becoming, a better person and in this case, a better athlete. So I think those are some really important lessons that sports have been able to teach me.
I agree. And I grew up with, there were 5 siblings. There were 5 of us total. One was the boy and the rest were girls. And my parents at the time, it was very traditional. I grew up in the southern part of the United States. I grew up in Florida. And my brother was in all of the team sports, but none of us girls were. We were put in music lessons and we were put in dance lessons, but we were not put in team sports because at the time it never would have occurred to my mom. And for that matter, at the time, once again, I'm telling my age, but also at the time when girls weren't really encouraged to be part of it. And I don't even know if there were teams at the time where I could have been included. Now, of course, that changed. And when my children were born, I had a boy and I had a girl, and my daughter has a disability, but I put them in team sports, but I just never also was in the team sports. So now and I love being an athlete, and I'm
anybody can be an athlete. That's how
I know, and that's what I am. We used to call it, a weekend warrior or whatever, but I have been exercising and dancing and running and since I was a teenager, because like you said, I love how it feels to be physically fit, but at the same time, I struggle with depression and some ADHD and stuff like that. And all of that helps my mental health. And we talk a lot about mental health.
Oh, it's true. I didn't even talk about that, but it's true.
Yeah, it really does. And especially at a time right now when we're all making New Year's, or a lot of people are making New Year resolutions. And we're talking about mental health. And my producer, Doug Forrest, is starting to do a show, Mind Talk, where he's really talking about how do we take care of these beautiful brains we got up here. And one way to do it, as you know, is by physical activity. So, let me turn the mic over to you to talk about some of that.
Talk about the mental aspect of sports?
Yeah, the mental, and how has it helped you, and how's it kept you positive? And because we know those things, we know as a society, those things really do help us.
Yeah, I'm certainly no expert in this, but just from my own feeling, like I think it's important to, for me, I know when I have a proper schedule, I get enough sleep, I have exercise, I'm able to take a little bit of time for myself. I'm a better mom. I'm a better and more productive person in the workplace, and I can be a better friend and wife. So I think athletics in conjunction with getting a lot of sleep and being able to just sort of like have a proper schedule, or at least I know you can't have like a perfect schedule, but I'm saying how important it is to know how important is sleep and having physical activity in your life, and how much it really benefits or impacts you.
So I think you're more of an expert than you maybe realize, because you might not be talking about it all the time, but you're actually living it. You make sure you're eating right. You are getting community involvement. There, a lot of the things that you just do as part of your life are what the mental health professionals are telling us to do. Oh. And so, so I think you are actually living it, Minda. I really do. I think you're living your best life, which is what we want. And once again, your best life is going to include obstacles and, contrasts and things like that.
That's where we learn the most. I mean,
that's what I find.
Like,
when they're really difficult.
If things are easy, then like I learn more through my so-called failures, or the times that I'm not able to get things done, and I'm kind of a problem solver too. Like I like to figure things out and try to determine what changes I need to make in order for me, or maybe it's not just me, like what can I do to impact so we can get to that goal or that finish line in an athletic sense.
Right. So I think you really are a lot more of an expert than you realize, because you're living it. So that's why I was very inspired by your story, and I was very inspired as I looked through your website, and I know that Dick was very inspired by you, and I think we need to try to inspire each other and help each other along the way, because sometimes people get so discouraged that in life is so intense and sometimes beats us up so bad that we don't even know where to begin. And of course, how you begin is you just have to start.
Sometimes. You just start. So you know what? Not every day is going to be great.
Right.
Like that's just the fact of life. But I always tell people, well, just start.
Right. Just start.
Everybody has their first day in anything that they're trying to do, and I guess I'm proof to, like, you don't have to be a particular age to start it too.
I know, which I love. I love that you are so young and you've accomplished so much. It's very, not only is it the reason why it's so inspiring to me is because my generation, we were advocates, and we did a lot when we were younger, and then we, were busy raising children and doing all the things we need to do, working and stuff. And some of us sort of fell asleep and forgot to focus on making a difference in the world. And now there are a lot of people in my generation that are waking up and saying, wait a minute, we need to be supportive of the generations behind us. And by the way, we need to learn from them. How did you even have the nerve to think you could do this? Well, probably what you did, it was step by step by step by step by step. And I really do want to ask you two more questions. What's next for you, Minda?
Mm-hmm. Well, so I'm still competing. I have a new athletic goal, is to complete half Ironmans on each continent, except for obviously Antarctica. So I'm looking to do a race either in Africa or Australia next year. And I'm also excited about doing more speaking. I've been continuing to advocate for global immunization programs because I am a product of not getting a vaccine, and I will continue to do that, talking about the mission to end polio worldwide. And then also, I really enjoy connecting with people as I am a keynote speaker, talking about what it takes to be successful.
And do you have corporate sponsorship? Because I know that a lot of athletes do get corporate sponsors, and it sure seems like a corporation would be lucky to sponsor somebody as amazing as you.
Oh, gosh, I mean, it's difficult. It's very expensive to race, especially as a disabled athlete, because of all of our equipment costs and everything. But yeah, I've been fortunate to have a number of sponsors along with me who've supported me from the beginning, and so I definitely I appreciate them, and I wear my sponsors' logos on my outfits, and I try to recognize them in my social media as well.
Good. And so that right there is an opportunity. If there's a corporation watching this, here's an opportunity for an athlete to really get behind and to really show our community that you are, supporting our community by supporting athletes like Minda. So, but my last question for you, Minda, is how can more people find out about your work? Of course, we're going to provide all the links, and we're going to tell people, but why don't you tell us how to learn more about your work?
Sure. Well, I have a website. It's mindadentler.com. I'm on Twitter at Minda Dentler. I'm also on LinkedIn at mdentler. And please check out my TED Talk. It went out live last March, and I'm excited to say that it has over 1 million views.
I know, I loved it. I love it. And what we'll do to help you find Minda is we'll put these links out on ruglobal.com/show, but we'll also put it on all of our social media as well, because we want you to know about Minda, and we want you to really get behind the work she's doing, because she can help so many others before and after her really claim their best life. So Minda, thank you for your work, and thank you for everything you're doing, and you really inspire me. So I really appreciate you being on the program today.
Thank you so much. It was a privilege to be here.
Okay. Thank you, Minda. Bye, everyone.
Thanks.